one of the things you've got to do in a B2B Switch interview is get the person who first thought that they had a problem and who carried this whole project across the line. Everybody else in the organisation, their job seems to be to block it. It's easy to say no when you work in a firm. It's very hard to persuade everybody else to change and persuade the CFO that today's the day we should spend money and we should spend it on this particular thing. So what I've got here is an interview about ESG consultants, and I deliberately selected somebody called Jonathan. I'll show you the screener questions that we use. This tells me that he was not the decision maker and that the risk was shared between different participants. And what you so here is this recruitment screener. So you can see here he's matching a bunch of the important things that we were testing for here. Maybe not on the job title, but I'm not too bothered by that. As you look through it, who did you hire? So McKinsey, okay, this is good. When did you do it? Last 12 months, excellent. The scope, you know, this starts to tell me that you're not dealing with decision making. You never know. You do get some sort of stronger and weaker types of responses, but this is a pretty generic and bland description of what the scope was. What scope within this was handed to it at the beginning. I mean, that doesn't mean anything. And then here, what was your job title? VP, I was part of a committee. And then the first person who suggested it was the CEO of their division. So I suspect in this case, the CEO is the person who had the real struggle. I didn't really matter that the consultant hadn't completed the project. I do use that to screen people out, but as long as they've started, that's fine. And then a few of these other pieces here doesn't really matter. But things like this, main reasons based on reputation. Again, it's very thin on the details. And who's the hardest person? The bank's board. Now, again, if I'm listening to that, normally there'd be a person or maybe a couple of people. You could be like, oh, CEO and the CFO were the challenge to persuade. But when it's a board, yeah, I'm not sure this person's really had the first thought and taken this through. The number $1 million, yeah, that's probably about right. But then this is the big tell here. Who took the greatest political risk in pushing to appoint this? Responsibility shared among several people. And in this case, that's very seldom the case. Yes, we might have had a committee. Yes, we might have all nominally been on the hook, but somebody in that committee was the one who pushed and said, we're going with McKinsey, we're not going with Bain and EY or whatever. And what you can do is you listen through this. I ran a whole Switch interview. It's exactly the same set of techniques, so you can still learn a lot from that. But what I want you to listen out for is how he describes how this decision is made. And as you listen to it, think, you know, does this sound like somebody that's made had the struggle and pushed it, like the example we gave with Karen, or even in the B2C example that we've given with Pranav? Or does this sound like somebody who maybe was a participant and watched along, but didn't really make things happen?
So this is some very, very early stage research that I'm doing, and I'm specifically interested in the language people use as they realize they might need some help, go searching for shopping, selecting, and then working with ESG consultants.
Okay.
And so where it's about the language, the good news is that this is, it's your story, it's in your words, so you can't get any answers wrong. If you can't remember something, no problem, just say so. But this is just literally whatever you can remember. The bad news is that I'm going to apologize up front. I probably will interrupt, and it's not because I want to be rude. It's just if it's given it's about language. If you say something, I just got to make sure I understand what it means to you, rather than maybe how I use the words. So that's that. And you can kind of think about this as like imagine I'm shooting a Netflix documentary series of people who've appointed ESG consultants. This is your episode. And I might ask some weird questions, like imagine I'm following you around with the camera trying to shoot the scene, who's there, what time of year is it or whatever. But I just find this helps prompt people's memories occasionally if you can't remember things. So a little bit weird, but hopefully not too challenging for you. Given
it's interesting. I have a whole opinion on ESG, and now I have a whole whatever. It's interesting. Oh, we can discuss about. I'll let you take control, and I'll input it whatever I can. That's fine.
Awesome, cool. Well, Jonathan, maybe can you start off by helping me with the big picture of this scene? So, who are you? What's your role in an organization? Who do you work for? What's going on when you appoint this ESG consultant?
Yeah, good question. So I'll give you kind of the broad thing, and you'll tell me how you want me to go with it. So,
Okay.
um, I am Jonathan Miller. I've worked in the financial industry since 2007. I've been at several firms. When I left my firm that I've been at the longest, which was Alliance Bernstein, ESG just started to get creeped into the nomenclature. I gotta say, it's probably around 2014, 2015 when it really became a big thing. To be brutally honest, there's been like two schools of thought of ESG and again, I'm coming from the lens of the financial investment world.
Yep.
Okay, so there's two ways of how to think ESG from a client portfolio perspective, which actually the way that always comes about on an investment professional or individual or firm, when it comes to the portfolio, the client usually asks for it. Why? Because at the end of the day, our job as money managers is to make as much money as possible given a risk tolerance, right? And these what we call caveats or lenses or restrictions, and that's probably the best way of how to handle that, right? Comes from the client saying, hey, I don't want guns, I don't want like Playboy, I don't want like any sex or any adult stuff in my portfolio. I believe that, yes, you're making me money, but I want this to be within the ethos and the ethics of what I believe. So
Okay.
that's one lens of how to look at it. The other lens looking at it as ESG kind of has evolved over the past, whatever, and then we can kind of say it divulged a little bit into DEI a bit, is from a firm perspective.
Okay.
How are you as a firm, as a model citizen in the firm industry way? So that's also interesting because I'm also now fast forward where I am right now. That's kind of where I have sat and helped out and and worked with a consultant on that front. So it's bifurcated in the
Okay.
sense of I know ESG looking at it from a portfolio perspective, and we call like direct impact investing,
Yep.
versus like a firm lens as well. So I'll leave it at that, and you tell me where you want me to go.
No, I think this is helpful. So you've got two different sides of this. There's the portfolio that I'm managing money on behalf of the client. They want me to make as much as they can given the risks they've got. However, they're throwing a ring around this saying, but I'm not letting you put my money into companies that do X, Y, or Z.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side, you've got the firm itself, and it's saying, as a business, what are you doing to meet your obligations under an ESG lens? It sounds like the second one is where this most recent story takes place. Is that right?
Yes and no. It's just more of like, given my experience working at bigger firms, seeing
Yep.
the way they've evolved into it. That's one thing, and then the other thing which I'll mention, which is interesting, right? So there is what we call, let's say, an ESG overlay or an ESG lens versus actually creating portfolios specifically, whether or not you're ESG or not, and we call direct impact investing. That was I would call direct impact investing under an ESG type of lens, but it's a little bit different and nuanced than saying, hey, I want an ESG restriction on my account. Let's say, for example, I'm just using that terminology or high level stuff. Yeah. So the answer is both. So yeah,
Okay.
I can talk about both at length. Yeah.
So maybe if we zoom into the most recent one, I think you mentioned that that you'd hired in McKinsey. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
So can you just tell me a little bit about that? So when was it that you guys made the decision to appoint McKinsey?
Within recently. So what's happening at my firm is that it's interesting. So right now I work for a regional bank, and
Okay.
I work in the wealth management arm. What that means is that regional bank, given where we are in the industry, and I can sense either from your, I'm not sure if you're, oh, it's late at night. I'm not sure where you are in the world right now, but I will say this: the regional bank industry in the U.S. is in severe turmoil right now. Given what has occurred over the past 2 years, a lot of banks are consolidating or they're selling themselves off. So
Okay.
we are actually the acquirer of a lot of these banks or mergers. So the firm which I joined past 2 years has been in acquiring mode, and actually as of last week, which is just so ironic, as I signed on for this project, we just merged with a bank to literally double in size overnight. So the reason that is important is because now you're acquiring various firms with various cultures, right? Different cultures, and you want to now look at it from the board has made a decision saying we want to ensure that we're under this ESG lens. We want to be a model citizen. We want to ensure that, again, now that we're going bigger, now there's a bigger target on our back, now that we're more in the forefront, right? These are some things that like third parties look at a firm for investment saying, hey, are these firms model citizens? So that's kind of where the ESG lens from a firm perspective came about during these acquisitions of the various banks.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. So working backwards, so give me a bit of story there. So McKinsey, when was it you signed on the dotted line with them?
I think it was late last year. It's been maybe a year to 18 months.
Okay,
so process.
This sort of time last year, I don't know, longer than, so maybe September. You've signed up with them?
Last September, maybe even before. It's been let's just call it 18 months for the sake of this.
Okay. So we'll go summer 2023.
Sure.
And specifically on that contract, what was it you asked McKinsey to do? What was their scope of work, and what were they tasked with delivering to you?
Yeah. So good question. Again, so the firm has used McKinsey before, especially as they're kind of looking at these banks and doing due diligence. That's something different. So this was just another value add and add-on flavor saying, hey, look at where we are from ESG, the economic sustainability and governance, right? Look at us from a holistic firm, and now also look at each of the other firms that we are acquiring, and where do we stand? Just where do we stand on in general? Are we helping? Are we just a greedy bank? Are we greedy lenders? Is it impactful? Yes, we give back to the community. I mean technically we were three separate entities that were what we call community/regional banks, and now that we're one bigger bank, how does that affect us? Or is one doing better than the other? Are there any best practices? So as opposed to, think about it this way, it's almost like division of labor, especially where we were beforehand. And I think also that's a good way of like that terminology, right? I think there's very smart people in your firm, right, that can handle this themselves, right? You have portfolio managers, you have economists, you have professors sometimes with PhD. You have very smart people in these firms, right?
Yep.
You're not hiring. You have board members who have various backgrounds. You can actually have these people do it themselves.
Yep. So why not?
Right. So it's two things. One is that they have day jobs themselves, right? They have to make sure the firm goes ahead. Do you want to have the portfolio manager who has a PhD, who has his background, focus on something like this project, or would you rather have him do what you're paying him to do, essentially, right? With his job description of managing money, people's money, making people's money. So this is what we call division of labor, right? That's why we really hire consultants ultimately for a lot of times, because they have expertise. You're hiring them to do a specific job, right? That the ask is take a deep dive into our company, see where we stand, right? That's a generic thing, and kind of go through and what you're finding. And so this is delegation, and it costs money, but it does save you time, right? So it's a cost benefit analysis at the end of the day, right? I could do it myself, but I'd rather have someone who's not in the mix, who's not going to get, it's almost like, actually it's the best analogy, right? And we see this all the time, right? All those Me Too sexual harassment situations. What's the first thing the firm says? We're going to do an internal investigation, right? We're going to do the internal investigation, right? As opposed to saying, forget that, because people think of whatever the outcome is going to be, even if you do find the person guilty, right? It holds less validity if you have a third party who's entering it, doesn't have skin in the game, whose sole job is to find or not find any wrongdoing up and down, right? And that's their job. So why wouldn't you hire the third party to make yourself look better? Same exact concept here. This whole point of ESG And let's be honest here, and that goes to my lens and the way I think, and I haven't said this yet, is that it's still about profitability. So it's a marketing tool, in my opinion, when you look at it from a firm perspective. Oh, we're X, Y, and Z on ESG, we're a good citizen, blah, blah, blah. That makes people look at you differently. They may make maybe 5% of your clientele or outside people like very happy, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's another marketing tool. We are the best in governance. We do a wonderful thing. We're a model firm. You should model us. It's a marketing tool. So at the end of the day, it's a cost benefit analysis on two fronts. One is that making sure that I can get what I want to get at the end of the day. And then two is that have the people internally who could potentially do this themselves focus on what really their day job is.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you right, number one, yeah, you've got a day job, so just stay doing it because
Mm-hmm.
you'll run the bank. Number two, even if you did it, people are not going to believe it as much because you're going to tell us what you want to tell us rather than maybe what a third party that's independent is going to tell us. And so then if we get them in, then we've got some nice marketing that says, hey, look, here's what we're doing. We're lovely people. Come. Is this about getting people to work with us or getting people to invest with us, or
Both?
okay?
I think sometimes, again, in the Wall Street financial world, I think especially with the younger generation, they're looking at things a little bit differently, good and bad. But let's just focus on the good stuff, right? So they want to work for a firm that has this reputation, right? So it does help attract talent, and on the flip side, obviously, it does help attract investment, right? You don't want to be known as the greedy bank. Look, I'll throw a name out there because why not? Because they're still viewed as such, right? Goldman Sachs, no matter what they do, they're always going to be this greedy bank. They're always
Yeah,
going to be deemed as the upper echelon, right? You work for them. Oh, they're just looking to get you money. They only deal with certain types of individuals. No matter what they do to rebrand with that name and their reputation from before, that's not going away anytime soon. It's got to be a complete like 180 in turnover. So yeah, it's a good example.
okay, yeah, perfect. Thanks for that. So, so the summertime 2023, we've signed up with Goldman's, and the scope is really to come in, take a look at.
I mean McKinsey, by the way.
Sorry, McKinsey. Yep.
Yeah.
So we signed up with McKinsey summer 2023, and they're in here to have a look at the combined entity of us plus three other banks, or was it us plus two other banks?
No, three.
Okay. And it's basically saying, where are we now?
Yep.
And is anyone doing better than anybody else? And what can we learn? Is that about the end of it? Like, is it
Yep.
just a report of where are we now, or is there some sort of plan for?
Well, so it's like a two-step bifurcated type thing. Right. First, you got to do like a deep dive, right, to each bank. Where are they now and relative to the benchmark and all that stuff. Then number two is that also like, we're not a JP Morgan, right? We're not a large bank. So also you got to benchmark. You have to, again, everyone is teach their own. You can't compare like a bank on the corner that I'm looking at right now to a larger bank at all and say, oh, they're ESG or not. It doesn't even make sense for them to say that, right? If they're a local bank or they're like we call a credit union or something like that, right? Credit union actually, at the end of the day, their whole charter is ESG. Right? Their whole point of credit union is to help support the community, and do various things. You can't focus on it's a whole different thing. So when you're looking at three different banks, right, you got to look at it. Where are we now? What is anyone doing better than that? Best practices, and then ultimately at the end, with the report that we received, and we're kind of at the end of it, although now it's kind of changed again due to another merger. Is what are next steps? Like, what should we do going forward?
Okay, cool. And that report, is that internal or external facing report?
This is all internal.
Okay, perfect. And roughly, I don't know if you're involved, but how much is McKinsey charging in summer 2023 for you to?
I don't know the exact that I don't know, or I don't have it readily available. It was not a cheap endeavor, this entire thing. I tell you that.
Yeah, yeah, McKinsey. I guess any idea of ballpark? Is it like hundreds of thousands, millions?
No, it may have been a few million.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't, or it may have been like 1 to 2. It wasn't cheap. Yeah.
Okay. And what does that compare to?
What do you mean?
Well, it's a few $1 million. It's not cheap.
Oh no, I'm looking at the absolute value, because at the end of the day, looking at expenses of where we should be and what it is, and also the scope of the project. I think we signed on for them for 24 months, and obviously that thing has changed.
All right.
And then along with it, it wasn't just they were charging us for this. So that's what I'm saying. I don't remember the whole entire package or what else, but McKinsey was also doing other stuff that we asked them to do. So I don't know the amount that was just for quote unquote hiring a sole ESG consultant, right? They did other things for us as well. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Nice one. So you mentioned that. So if this is summer 2023. This has kind of been triggered a bit by this sort of turmoil in the industry and an acquisition spree. Can you take me back to when was the first time for this engagement that anybody said, hey, like maybe we need to do something different, and it's sort of pushed the snowball down the hill toward hiring an ESG consultant?
Oh, good question. Simple answer. So when these banks started to merge, and get acquired, right? That's because of the whole turmoil in the regional banking industry. So we hired you hire a consultant to help with I would say, fast track the acquisition. The reason that is done, and that's pretty common when you're going through this type of stuff, is because you're dealing, right? Even when we're going to go through this merger right now, there for sure is going to be a consultant. I'm not sure if it's McKinsey or whoever they want to hire, but to help fast track the merger, right? The last thing you want to do is we're merged, and then like you're trying to figure out where to go. The best thing to do is really hire a third party there and kind of like shoot down. You have to cut expenses here. Here's your overlap, and it saves you so much time after it's approved by the SEC to move the ball forward. So that was going on in 23. And then on top of that, since it was still part of the nomenclature, it was basically 3 really regional community banks, which in the ethos were always about helping the communities, right? That's when we said, oh, let's add on this little part of the package of where you guys can do a deep dive and figure out also ESG. So it was kind of like all simultaneously to work together. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Let me just scroll this down. So basically, if I'm hearing you right, let me try and play this back. Sometime early in 2023, we're sat there saying we've got turmoil in the industry, but we're the big dog. We've got the opportunity to acquire these 3 community banks. There's never a doubt we've got to have consultants in here. They're going to fast track the acquisition. They're going to do the due diligence. They're going to save us time for SEC approval. However, there's some part about the community banks, they're helping their community. So I guess what's the first thought of let's tack this ESG stuff on? Who comes up with it?
It was the presidents of the bank.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That was because at the end of the day, you have to realize something when it comes to these smaller banks, right? They truly, the ones that are good, they truly care about their people, and the people they're serving. That's really the ethos of these banks. So with that being said, everyone's scared about getting bigger, and I get it, right? Because you get bigger, oh, you're greedier, you get to say no more, you get to screw over less people, you're not helping out the smaller business anymore, right? You're just going upstream, right? And you have to realize the reason why you work with a smaller bank is because the big banks have screwed you. I can tell you that constantly over and over again, right? Unless you're of certain wealth and affluency, business-wise or even individual, the big banks have the ability to say no because they can. They don't need everyone's business. They're so big, right? I love using this fact that when I worked at Bank of America, one out of every 2 or 10, I forgot it was, but it was pretty small, uses Bank of America. We're talking checking account, car loan, savings bond, whatever the heck it is. It's insane, their footprint, right? So they have the ability to say no. Well, not smaller banks. And so when you get bigger, you're like, well, what does this mean for my people? And every president felt that way. And these were all legacy institutions in the community that meant a lot. So part of when it was going through this whole thing, that was definitely an eyebrow raise, saying, okay, I get it, it's healthier, blah blah blah. We know what's going on in the industry. It's probably better for all of us to band together. It seems to be, obviously, when you're going through the acquisition, we, on paper, we all look similar, different regions, that's fine. But now that we're all together, what does this mean for each of us? Who's doing what? Who's giving more money out to the community? What direct impact are you doing? What kind of business are you looking at? Are you only giving it to people who are your clients? Are you going outside of your comfort zone, et cetera, et cetera? So, yeah. How do you treat your individuals? How do you treat people? Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So again, let me make sure I'm catching up or I'm following along. So this is really small banks don't say no to the people in their community that need funding and support, whereas a Bank of America can just say no because they're massive.
Correct.
And now the presidents of the acquired banks are saying, do they have a choice in being acquired, or
the board? So no. So don't forget, all presidents of the bank all have to suck up to the board. The board approves it. So you had 3 boards, right? Right. So the board, if the board approves it, I can say this because it's publicly, just to kind of give understand this. So we merged with another bank. The other bank president was unaware of the potential merger. The board went around him, and
Right.
in essence, they kicked the president once it was approved. He basically found out about the merger as it was kind of in talks and moving the ball forward, and he realized he was getting pushed out. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So in terms of this, the board of directors for all these smaller banks have just said, this is financially what we have to do. However, it seems like there's some sort of cultural, we still, if we're going to assimilate these people, we've got to show a degree of respect. Or is it more about the acquiring firm showing respect, or is it more about the acquired firm trying to say, hey, can you do this kind of ESG stuff just so that I've got a story to tell my people? Like, what?
No. It's actually genuine here. It's actually genuine. And it comes from the president. I think that
Comes from the president of the big acquiring bank.
It comes from both. I think that at least in this case, our acquisition actually worked out very, very well, and even with this merger, I think it's also going to be very, very well, because it makes sense. These regional banks all kind of sing from the same exact songbook. Sure, there's some small quirks here and there that are different given the regions, given the prior history. Fine, but I think that all of them truly believe in making an impact to the community and really caring about their people, which is why, even though McKinsey, kind of agreed with that, it was kind of like a really seamless merger on the cultural front and all on that front. Right? There's other quirks of a merger that you don't think about as an outsider, like technology and HR and all that crap, which does make a difference, because that really affects your day-to-day people. But taking that out and not getting too much in the weeds, we're focusing on ESG and kind of like that. In this case, it was actually a mutual agreement. All of them kind of agreed with the same exact thing. They were all legacy banks making tremendous impact in their communities in their various regions, and they wanted to ensure that did not change, and it has not changed.
Okay, perfect. And so, as the acquisitions are going on, how do we move from discussing this and saying we've got to make sure this is factored in to the due diligence, to shopping for a consultant to go and do this? Who is it who goes looking for the consultant?
Yeah, no. So that whole process, that was pretty simple. I mean, that's all relationship based, right? Because you have McKinsey, you have PwC, you probably have 1 or 2 more, you probably have some smaller ESG players. Since we were doing a pretty nice, hefty acquisition, we wanted a reputable and brand name. And so it was either PwC or McKinsey, and I think someone had a relationship. By the way, that's the way usually consulting gets hired. It's usually relationship based.
Okay.
Deloitte, yeah. I know somebody at board, blah blah blah, used to work for me and all that crap. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not true. It's not a true RFP. Even though probably at the end of the day it probably should be, but it's never the same. There's always someone who has leg up.
And when we're shopping for a consultant here, are we shopping for an ESG consultant, or are we shopping for a consultant to help with the acquisition lock, stock, and barrel and just chuck some ESG into the mix?
Good question. So this was the reason why I went with a bigger boy as opposed to a smaller one. We were looking for more of more of a menu options of what they can help us with. Yeah,
Okay.
not just a pure ESG consultant. In this case, and again, that was our thing. I mean, I was not part of the acquisition portion of with the consultants, where I kind of, and then we haven't gotten to this yet, but when you were asking the questions beforehand, I was involved with the ESG. And still am, actually.
Okay. Can you tell me about that? How did you get roped into this?
They wanted various representatives because this was more about twofold. One was looking at a company as a whole, and then two is looking at the investment portfolios as well. We might as well loop that in as well. So we had them look at our portfolios as well, just so we get the McKinsey blessing. That was used as a pure marketing tool. We paid a little bit more for that. Not that much because it was pretty simple to see what we were doing. And then it was more from a company viewpoint. So again, I sat on the committee. I raised my hand and, talking to my direct, the president of my company, of the three altogether, without confusing that, right? So there's various presidents and I still report up. And so I told him, no, look, I have experience in this from my prior firms. And so since I did, they put me on this committee, and then I had more of a vocal voice because it wasn't my first rodeo kind of looking at these things.
Okay. And what was the role of the committee?
To see where we stood. I mean, the role of the committee was to ensure that we're in compliance and is there more that we can do, or status quo. Basically come out with an ultimate plan of like, see where we're at now, post acquisition, and if there can be improvements, what should we do?
Okay, that makes sense. And then the investment portfolio piece sounds like it was tacked on. Is this important to the work, or is it just, well, we've got them in anyway, so throw a bit of extra work?
No. So when we were like looking at the ESG stuff, I raised a thing to our investment guy, our CIO, and I said to him, if we're doing this, it's going to be great marketing fodder, right, for that. And instead of taking 2 seconds to see exactly what we're doing, I'm sure we can charge, it'll be a de minimis fee, but it's really good marketing tool to say that we have ESG compliance, we have these overlays, we could do certain things and kind of get their blessing. Or some sort of statement from them. I said, just do it. It's an easy. So they're in here anyway. I'm sure we can negotiate the fee down. Yeah, whatever it was. Yeah.
This is like secondary. It's almost, I've got somebody coming in to fix the lights or whatever, and I can get.
Yeah, it's like you're at the doctor's office and you're like, you know what, I'm here. Go check the mole on my back. Like something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And so if we talk about this, so basically you said, it doesn't sound like any of the pure play ESG guys are ever even in the frame. You got McKinsey and PwC. Can you remember, like, was there ever some sort of active comparison of the pair of them, or was this kind of an anointment because it's McKinsey and it's a big deal?
It was, like I said, it was relationship based, and then there's some nuances here and there. The difference and their approach. From what I was, told on the committee of why we hired one versus the other. But I gotta be honest with you, when it comes to the bigger boys, right? It's they're gonna do great work. They both have great reputations. It's more about a fit. That's key, right? Because your consultant. Look, the last thing, right, and this is my view on consultants in general, because I also deal with them on a individual basis when it comes to like family offices and stuff like that, right? Yeah. Their job, really, the last thing you're hiring a consultant because you think you need change, right? You really don't want a consultant that's really going to go and come back to you and say, oh, everything's great, you're perfect. Then you're like, well, why the hell did I pay you? What else? I don't want to hear that, right? So they're always going to offer, and that's the truth, by the way. They're always gonna throw something a little bit, a wrench in there, right? Is it a gut renovation? That's always tough to say and tough pill to swallow, right? Consultant coming in saying you guys are I'll use the term a shit show, right?
Yeah.
And you guys need to revamp everything. Again, that's a massive turnoff. So they have to say something in between. So with that being said, right, at the end of the day, that's really what consultants ultimately do, unless they're really trying to be brutally honest and saying you guys suck, or like they come back to you and say this is a clean bill of health, blah blah blah, and then like here's some things that you can change on the margins. So again, long way of answering your question. It's all about a good fit and who's
Okay.
making the pitch. Yeah.
And so in this case, you weren't involved in this decision, though, right?
Not the larger one. No.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
No problem. When McKinsey's put this together, you said it's 24 months. It's a few $1 million, but the ESG component of this is going to be less than that, I presume.
Yeah, if reality is maybe $100,000, maybe more, maybe it could be like 250. I'm saying the most 250 because again, it was a smaller portion of the overall project. But also it was a longer stay because we wanted to have him tack on, and the reason why I would say this, because the ESG portion should not take that long. It should be a 6 to 8 month project. The reason why we had him on for 24 months is because we wanted them to take a look at, as we were kind of really merging together and changing things over. We want to make sure that we were still, in the same exact place we were, when you guys initially started to implement it. And ironically, as we were middle of doing this, we just became a bigger bank. So I don't know what's going to go on afterwards. We may extend this little contract of ours, but yeah, exactly.
Okay, so the time is like this should only take 6 to 8 months, but actually
it should be, yeah, and this should be a quickie. It really should.
But we're going to keep you on post merger to make sure that like, whatever we found in the individual banks, like we've at least maintained that level of ESG as the bigger bank, even if we haven't improved it, but we haven't backslid and we're not getting worse.
Correct.
Okay. Who's that important for? Because now you've merged, the boards have all said, yep, we're sold. You've swallowed these things. The presidents have possibly been pushed out. Like
no, so no, it should have happened that way, but no. So every bank that's part of the issue at hand, that's separate than ESG. We're all one bank. We all kick up to one parent company. But in the meantime, we still had three separate boards, then one main board, and three separate presidents. That's a separate conversation.
Right.
But I'll tell you this, they're not happy now because with this larger merger, they've announced that all the boards are going away. So
right, okay, fair enough.
All the presidents are now getting layered. They're basically now delegated now to a regional director. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so they've been dropped down.
They've been dropped down. Yeah. They're not happy. No one's happy. I'm happy, but they're not happy.
Fair enough. I mean, you don't know why McKinsey, but you mentioned earlier on, no bank wants to be Goldman Sachs. But why are you hiring McKinsey to do ESG work? They don't exactly have the world's best reputation as a caring, loving consultant of choice, do they?
Bingo. That's exactly it.
Oh, okay.
That's exactly it. You're looking for again, when it comes to consulting, not like on a reputation of yourself, you still need a bigger firm to kind of give you the blessing, right? So going back to marketing, right? McKinsey, Deloitte, PwC, these firms are recognition and everyone knows them, right? When you hire like a hedge fund or whatever it is, and you're hiring like a consultant underneath, you want these names underneath you. Goldman Sachs doesn't have the reputation, right? I think I don't use this term, but everyone's envious of Goldman Sachs, which is why they have that negative reputation, right? I think everyone strives to be somewhat of a Goldman Sachs or a JP Morgan Chase, but they always try to knock them down off the peg because of X, Y, and Z. From a consumer perspective, I get it, but from an industry perspective, they all have envy. So ultimately, right, these firms, you can knock them, you can tell them, blah blah blah. There's a reason why they're the biggest firms in the game, right? Because they're really good with what they do. And you can, maybe they're not for everybody, but they have a reputation to uphold and they're excellent with what they do. Hence you hire these types of consultants. You're not looking, and that goes back to fit, right? So while you're right, it's not a warm and fuzzy firm per se. They're cutthroat, whatever it is internally, but I don't care, right? They do a damn good job, right? And to my original point, while they may be just giving me a report that's different just because they can't say you guys suck or you guys are great, just because they have to kind of uphold that. Ultimately, at the end of the day, when they do consult, the reason why they are so big is because they're giving you the right advice. I think at the end of the day, there's a balance between giving the right advice and also like being a bit contrarian to what you have.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, sir. Okay. So maybe makes some sense now. The decision itself, this is happening in sort of mid 2023, but it's all part of the merger. So all the boards are just signing off on this. McKinsey's come in. There's a relationship there. You pulled it in. Is there any tension around this, or were you not part of that whatsoever?
What, McKinsey?
Yeah, to get them in. Was there ever any pushback, any rejection, or is that all happening at a level above?
No, from what I heard, it was they were signed on, no problem. There was no tension of hiring on. No.
Okay, cool. And
everyone agreed. Everyone agreed why.
And I guess what's the experience like? So when do they come and start doing work, and when do you first either get involved in this committee or experience them coming online and doing some of this stuff?
Yeah, so the committee was kind of, well, twofold. One is that you work in tandem with the consultant. So the committee's formed once they sign on, and then like at that point, right, like anything, like even when you have like a regulator coming in, right, they know what to look for, but they're still doing the peripheral interviews. So like the first like maybe month or so, it's kind of fluffy, right? They're just meeting. I'm from McKinsey. You do the meet and greet, kiss, handshake, babies. Kiss babies and shaking hands. Don't shake babies. And then right. So that's exactly what they're doing, right? So they're meeting with the portfolio managers. They're meeting with employees. They're meeting with HR. They're meeting with they could say, "Can I speak to so and so?" Right? They're just trying to get a general layout of what the hell is going on, right? Because just like a new employee, right? They don't know where the water cooler is, so they got it. But they have a roadmap of how to get to the water cooler. Right? They have a roadmap. This is not their first rodeo. Again, that's a beauty about working with these firms. They have a plan of action. They know how to do it. They know who they have to talk to. Right? They're not just figuring things out. Yes, there's always a quirk within each firm of how things are going on, but these guys have a roadmap and they've done this before. So you give them a task, get this done. You don't have to ask how. They know how to do it.
Is this getting in the way? Because you got these fluffy meetings, kissing babies and shaking hands and all this sort of stuff. Like, does anybody want to do these meetings, or
no.
is it okay?
The answer is yes and no, right? It's always the pain, right? Hold on. No one likes change. Let's take one step back here. No one likes change. So that's where everyone's mentality is. But does anyone really want to do it? They know it's for the better. They know when it comes to this particular thing, it's only going to be beneficial. I think at the end of the day, when it comes to ESG within a company, I think that's helpful, right? I think that forgetting your motive why, I do believe that is helpful for the firm overall, and as a good citizen and employee, you kind of understand why it's going on and you kind of believe in that mission.
Okay, so people are on board even though it's kind of a bit warm and fuzzy.
Correct.
Okay, and like I guess this is going on for quite some time now. You've been rolling for 24 months.
Well, not yet. Right. So last summer. So we're on 18 months. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you've had 18 months of this. When do you start getting something of any value?
Within. Okay, so that's a subjective question. What value means, right? So what's the value would only be at the end when they give their final report and you get their blessing and you can use their marketing material, right? That's really what the value is at the end. But with this, it's pretty simple. And we're going from the lens of the firm. So, right, they're having interviews, and then there's check-ins, right? So, right, we didn't go back to logistics of how this works, right? So we kind of like let them run free for about six weeks. Then we have a meeting with them and we find out their findings. And then we have monthly check-ins at this point while they're doing all that. So every check-in, they're coming in with what they're finding. And let's say, for example, and I'll use this as an example, right? They're finding actually, your Rhode Island bank is doing this and this in the community that has a larger impact. Maybe you should think about, instead of sponsoring this, you should sponsor this and see where it goes and all that stuff. So to me, that's way more important. Again, you kind of get that a change almost initially every month with all the check-ins, right? You're kind of hearing little tidbits that you would not necessarily pick up from right. You get that you would not necessarily pick up unless you had a consultant. That's the way of answering it.
Okay, so the only time you're ever actually going to get value is when you get this report at the end, and you can use that for your marketing to say, here's who we are and what we're doing. However, there are drip feedings of useful insights coming out on monthly check-ins. And is that like recommendations to sort of change in increments, or to?
It's not necessarily. It's kind of them checking in, but then you're kind of fleshing it out, because to my point, you don't wait till the end of the project, even though it really should be a lot shorter, right? And that would make more sense, right? In a normal situation where you're not going through this kind of things with us, that it would be a lot shorter, and then you're kind of waiting to the very, very end. But like, the reason why this is kind of interesting incremental is because we're changing along the way, right? And so what he had a conversation, we're actually going to follow through with recommendation, or what might be occurring, and then that's a snowball effect, because then when we were checking in next month, he's saying, oh, I've seen improvement, oh, this is doing much better, oh, this is much more impactful. So it's not like, to be quite honest with you, in this situation that we're seeing the changes almost immediately, because we're really following through with it. And again, these aren't in our situation. It's not like we had nothing else going on. Again, going back to who we are as a firm and our ethos, ESG was always who we were, especially because we were always about impacting the community on a smaller basis. So, so while yes, in a real situation, you wait to the very end, and it's not a long project. In our case, it was being done simultaneously.
Okay. At what point in the last 18 months does the due diligence on the acquisitions stop and the integration work start?
So don't forget, the due diligence was kind of done. What they were really helping us out with was trying to fast track getting rid of all these like nuances, or again, one firm, one bank, not three different banks. So hang
on. So maybe I've got this wrong. So 18 months ago, the acquisitions have already taken place. So they've done the due diligence. The acquisitions are over and done with. And we hired them to help fast track the actual merger, right? To get rid of all the three banks, and try because what happens is, again, good example. Look at my old firm, Bank of America. Bank of America acquired Merrill Lynch and U.S. Trust. That real merger, didn't really finalize until 10 years after the actual acquisition. And so going back to, they did not hire a consultant because they're a big boy and they feel they could do it themselves. It was a disaster. I worked at U.S. Trust, and then they essentially got rid of the U.S. Trust name and brand, and they kicked it into Bank of America, and essentially a Merrill Lynch and Bank of America. That's a separate conversation. So the reason why you hired. Yeah. But on this one here, maybe this might be a terminology thing, but when does
not due diligence? You're fast tracking not the merger. It's the you're fast tracking the. I'll use this terminology. No, it's wrong, but you're fast tracking them to become one bank, not three different companies.
Okay. Okay. So
almost like a symbiotic.
The legal paperwork is done, and we are now all under one umbrella. And now I'm going to go and hire a consultant to take 3 companies under one umbrella and make it one company. Is that finalization?
That's correct.
Perfect. Okay. Okay. And so that's where this piece came on. Quick question. Do you know, did McKinsey advise on the acquisition, or did they come in as a separate entity after?
No, the acquisition was more rushed. If you recall what was going on last summer in 23, it was a disaster, and it was a bloodfest. So that was a fast, quick due diligence of like, how can we just grow in assets and avoid any sort of freaking out and bleeding of numbers? Let's do this, and this. And they knew each other. The banks knew each other because of their competitors, right? And so they knew about the industry. So it was a rushed merger. I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Okay.
It was a quick due diligence. The people involved, the boards involved were all on the same exact page. So they wanted to go through, make sure no one had any skeletons, no major skeletons in their closet. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So this is then, if I'm hearing right, there's a bloodbath going on. Everybody's hurting, and so the group of competitors have come together and said, "Let's just merge." And so the due diligence is done ASAP. So McKinsey weren't involved in that. Do you know who did the advice for that?
I don't think there was any.
Oh wow!
I don't think there was any outside advice. It was 3 boards got together, they knew each other, and that was it. Again, realize on the back end, a lot of stuff goes on behind closed doors. It's all relationship based. It's all prior things. So someone knew somebody else, and you make a phone call. So I'll be honest with you, the recent merger of our bank and another bank, that was through since both companies were up in Boston, the parent companies, they knew each other, the boards knew each other, and then they asked to merge. Yeah, okay. There wasn't a consultant involved.
Okay, got it. So this is that's why it's happened after the fact rather than as part of the due diligence. It's okay. Now we're all in bed together. How do we make a go of this as one entity rather than 3 entities?
Correct.
Okay, cool. Nice one. Thanks. So I think I've asked most of my usefully dumb questions. What would a smart person ask about this? What am I missing in this story that might be really important for me to know? And I just haven't asked the right question to find it.
So you're focusing on all the pre-conversation, right, of how we get there.
Yeah, it's kind of, think about it like how we got to now. You know, you don't end up one day with couple of $1 million to spend, even if it's only 100, 250 grand on ESG, without some dominoes falling over and something sort of propelling you into action. And I guess I'm just interested in A, the story, and B, the language people use as these dominoes start to tip over and end up where they end up.
Right. So the way you have to look at it also is the lens where you are today, right? It's not 2015. This is 2024. So all firms know about ESG, have various opinions on ESG, and are using it in various ways. The way I would think about it today, and the lens I would look at it today, if I'm hiring a consultant today, is what am I using it for and why? So I will say this, right? And because you're now seeing DEI kind of die, and it will definitely die out, and you won't even hear it in nomenclature with a new president coming up. That's political. But what you're finding is the problem is with DEI, it's not doing what it was supposed to be doing. That is also and part of the issue with ESG. That ESG, while it's great on what it stands for and being a good citizen and all that, it's not profitable necessarily. And again, do you do it solely for profit, or do you do it for being a good model citizen? There's a balance there. What I can tell you is that clients who, and this goes back to the portfolio management, which is important to think about, clients are now scaling back their it's very funny. At the end of the day, money drives all thought. Despite you want to give charity, you give charity. But do you want to be charitable in your portfolio? And what I mean by that is that are you going to willing to give up 10% of your portfolio because you're against AI? Let's say, for example, so you're not going to invest in NVIDIA. Like, so clients still react, and act, making money despite what they might think deep down inside. Because I'll be honest with you, before we had all these ESG lenses, the way we always spoke to clients on the wealth management side was that restriction that you want is too restrictive and it's going to hurt your overall performance. If you truly feel that way about X, Y, and Z, why don't you give it charity? Why don't you start a nonprofit? Why don't you start an endowment? Why don't you donate to a DAF, a donor advised fund? All these funky things that you could do and do direct impact versus actually putting your money where your mouth is and not investing in these things, because it will hurt you on the money side. So the reason why I say that question, it's important to think about it now in 2024. Really, why are you hiring an ESG consultant, which is kind of like what you were kind of asking, but also like what impact do you think it's going to have on your firm, and doing that? It's almost like the genesis of like, we're in 2024, everyone knows about it. Why haven't you done it? Right? That's almost the question. Why haven't you done it? And if you have done it, what's causing you to hire a consultant to do what? Is it throwing bad money out there? Like, again, like you know how to do it, you know how to execute it, you know all that good stuff. Like, what's going on here? Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, perfect. Look, thank you very much. That's helpful. That's given me some more food for thought. And it looks like it's late and you're in San Francisco, so I won't keep you any longer. I'll let you get on to pre-Christmas celebrations or having some fun or doing whatever you're there doing. So hopefully it's a good time.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks a lot for your help, and take care. Merry Christmas.
Yes, you too. Take care.
So as you listen through that interview there, what you can hear is that Jonathan talks a lot when he's talking about the decision, and he uses we. And this is telltale signs that he hasn't actually made the decision. So we needed a consultant that had a good profile, or we needed to have somebody who was who had experience in doing this before. And the difference there between that and Karen's interview, the B2B interview I shared before, where she talks a lot about I was sat in this meeting, I struggled with this, I couldn't understand my vendor. And these things are very different. So you can see one is all about a struggle. The other is somebody who's probably on the committee, he's probably passively observed the selection being made, but he hasn't been the one who drove this forward. It may have been the CEO or the president or somebody else in the organization. You can still learn a lot from the techniques that are used here. It's exactly the same as any other Switch interview. But if you get one like this in your research, be very careful, because it isn't the person who had the struggle and what they're really weak on. They might be able to tell you about the context the company was in, but they can't tell you their personal context of why they really needed to make it happen. And more importantly, around the decision, they can't tell you the trade-offs that were made, because they were just sort of passengers on this. Versus somebody who's really in bed and has the problem. They might have to make a trade-off of going for the cheaper vendor just because they could get that through. But you learn a lot from those trade-offs. If you get a research participant who's like this and you suspect that they're not the real decision maker, I would urge you to take them out of your research. You almost want the Men in Black red flashy light, erase your memory of this interview and go and find somebody else who has had the struggle. Otherwise, you're going to mess up your research findings when you come to the analysis phase. Good luck.